Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to do a flower that's just come out in my garden. I haven't cut one off because I've only got two flowers on at the moment, so I don't really want to spoil them. But what I am going to do for you today is a flower called the peacock flower. Now when I do my details below the video, I'll put in the Latin name as well so you know what it is. So if you want to look it up online, then you will be able to. It's actually a member of or related to the Gladioli family. A little bit different because it grows in a totally different way to Gladioli, but the shape is not that dissimilar to a gladioli, but it's a very interesting flower anyway, and it's taken me a long time to get hold of some bulbs, so I've got mine coming up for the first time in the garden at the moment. So I'm going to take you down to my board. So I'm going to get some sorry, I'm not going to get some white paste out to start off with. I need to start off with the stamens. Now they're very fiddly to do these, so this might take me a while to do them, but what I'm using is I'm getting hold of 3 stamens. Doesn't matter what kind they are, as long as they're thin cottons. I'm using the micro stamens because they're probably on a thinner cotton than some of the others. So what I'm going to do is, when I get hold of them, with my big fingers, they're hard to get hold of without dropping them all on the floor. One's gone down there, there it is. Got ya. So if you get them all together, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the heads, because there aren't any bead heads on the edge of these sort of flowers. And I found, oh, there they are. I find what I've done with my scissors. So I'm just going to take off the heads. All I'm going to use is the cottons from the stamens for this. Right, so I want 3 smaller ones and 3 larger ones. So I'm just going to, if I can just get hold of these between my fingers, when I get hold of it, stop them from flying all over. Hang on a minute. Told you this was fiddly, didn't I? The task we set ourselves when we're doing sugar flowers, especially when they're small ones and you've got big hands. Right, I've managed not to get them to fly all over, but because they're very fine, they are difficult to see. And I've got 2 of them there. There should be another one here somewhere. There it is, I think. One there. Just bear with me a second while I just sort this out. Have I got any spare bits anywhere? Just in case I don't find that other one. Should be on here somewhere. Never mind, I'll have to do another one. So I'll get another stamen out. Take the head off of it. This time I'm going to turn it the other way around and keep hold of it when I cut it off. So that one that bit I don't want. That bit I do want. Right, so I've got a thin wire here. You can use thin wires for all of these because they're not particularly big, and by the time you put them all together it's going to make it a lot thicker. Just in case you don't know what I'm talking about, I have got a picture here on my phone, so I'm just going to enlarge this. I took a picture of the one that I have in the garden. Hang on, go back. Make it larger on my phone so you can see the flower itself there. So that's the flower that we're going to do. Right, so I'm going to start off with a thin wire. Then you want some white tape, and I'm going to tape everything on with white tape for the time being, because then you'll understand why. So start your tape off at the top of your wire. Now you can do this either one of two ways. You can either start it off on your wire, or you might find it easier to get your 3 stamens together, the 3 small ones, and tape those together. So I'm just going to take that off my wire, and I'm going to start again. So I'll just put my camera up a bit this way so you don't play pop with me for not being able to see what I'm doing. Just going to make sure that I've got the right side of my tape. That's the sticky side, so we'll turn that over. Get your 3 bits together. You can't see these because they're all white against my board, it doesn't stand out. Make sure you get all the tops level, and then get your tape round it. You only want probably about ½ an inch showing. Roll your tape on like that, then put your wire in. For a lot of people starting off, this is probably an easier way of doing it. If I can get this started, so far this is going easier than yesterday. I'm probably speaking too soon when I was doing one of the flowers ready to get it ready, because I have got one that I've done. Oops. I'd say just talk amongst yourself while I'm doing this, but unless there's more than one of you there, you can't do that, can you? This is the hardest bit, trying to get them to roll together instead of roll away, which is what this wire's doing. Probably because it's such a thin wire as well, there's a bit less to grip hold of with this. Now you could use either a 26 gauge wire or a 28 gauge wire, which is what I've used for all the petals. This proves the point that no matter how many years you've been doing it, some things aren't as easy for us professionals, so-called professionals, as anybody else. And it could be that my hands are a bit greasy because I've just used some white fat for cleaning my board. Come on, roll. Got ya! So exciting when things work. So I'm going to tape down a little bit, and then what I'm going to do then is I'm going to make sure I've got all these 3, and there's one missing, one dropped out, I think. Yeah, one's dropped out. So what you do is just curve those down like that, give them a good curve on the end, and do 3 of them. Don't have 2 in like I've got there. Then the other 3 that you've got, the straight ones, again get those, get them all levelled up, and then these are your stamens. That's the pistil that I've just done there, and then the straight ones start just below that and roll those on. They've gone a lot easier. And then tape down. I've got a bit of colour on there, but that doesn't really matter because we're going to cover that over anyway. So then just get your 3 stamens out and pull them out like that. They sort of go to one side on this flower. So if I just put that against my hand so you can see what I've done there. You've got 3 stamens, then you've got pistils. Should be another one on there, but that's disappeared somewhere, probably on here. But never mind. on the other one, I have actually made one up that I've put together, which I've got here, that I've already put together. These are a bit overemphasised of these, but never mind. Right, so next step is to make the petals for the flower. So we're just using ordinary white flower paste for this, or porcelain, or whatever it is you're working in. Now then, the cutters that I've got, I haven't got a cutter for this particular flower. So what I've done is I've got two petals cutters that I think are more or less the same shape. One is the narrow petal from the small lily cutter set. So if you've done the lilies that I've done in an early video, you may have this. And then I've used a simple leaf cutter, which is just slightly shorter than that, because the pointed petals are longer. So those are the two cutters I'm using, just making sure I've got no colour on my board. Right, bit of white fat on the board. Make sure we can roll the paste out really thin. Just get rid of those scissors out of the way and start rolling it out. So what you want is 3 of each petal. Like I said in the last video, when you're rolling your paste out, just concentrate a bit on the middle bit, because sometimes that comes out a bit thicker. So just roll a bit more on there. Your end bits will go thinner and your middle bit can be quite thick, so just check on that. You can tell by rubbing your hands over to feel how thin it is. But we do want this fairly thin. Not too thin, we're not going as thin as rose petals. And then I'm going to use my ridge rolling pin. If you can't use these, or you haven't got one, use the groove side of your groove board. And then we're going to roll down to get right. So then what I do then is cut out 3 of each petal. Because there aren't so many on this, I am going to cut them all out. Normally I only do 1 of each, but then I end up with spare petals knocking about that I haven't used, and they end up in the bin, so it's a bit of a waste of paste. So what I'm going to do is make up enough petals so that I can do another flower later on. Right, so once I've cut those out, take the paste away. This might be a little bit difficult for you to see, because with it being mostly white petals, and obviously I could do with getting hold of a black pad so you can see what I'm doing. But I'm sure you get the idea, because if you've done enough videos with me, you'll know all these steps are the same for all flowers. Get those onto there for now. Then I can pop that down there and I can get my wire. So I'm using a 32 gauge wire, and I'm going to cut them into quarters. So if I get 2 wires, there we are, 2 wires. Cut those in half, and then half again. Don't matter if they're not exactly the same length. It's not going to be any detriment to the flower if they're not exactly the right length, as long as you've got enough wire. So what we need to do then is to get all of these petals onto the wires. So again, into the bottom of your paste, twist the end in, and up your paste like that. So really in real time you're watching me do all the steps with all of the petals for one flower, which as I say I don't normally do, but on this occasion I can't do the leaves to go with this because the leaves are very long leaves that start from the base of the plant and then the flower comes up in the middle of it, a bit like Gladiola. As I say, it belongs to the Gladiolus family. Always find out which is your best cut edge on your wire before you start putting it into your petals so that it doesn't tear your paste, because if it's a little bit raggedy on the end or the Semtex on the wires just come a little bit loose, it can tear your paste and spoil the whole of your work, and then you have to start all over again. I've got two wires there, the other end, yeah, a bit better. Because it's all white, I'm having difficulty seeing this, never mind any of you watching me on camera. There's two more to do. See, that's coming a bit loose on there, so I'm just going to use the other end. Better. Don't forget, if you've got any questions about anything or anything you'd like to see, leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I see that I'm creeping up a little bit. It's still a little bit slow, but for anybody that's watching for the first time, it's free to subscribe. I don't have paid subscriptions. Just get rid of those two wires there. So then we need to go on to your ball tool. Oops, just dropped my palette knife, and thin your edges. Don't be frightened of putting a bit of pressure on the edges. You want the really thin so that you're taking that cut edge off. Even if your paste is a little bit too on the thick side at this particular point, that corrects that, because I've noticed in a lot of competitions sometimes I think the petals are too thick, but the judges are quite happy if the edges are thin. Doesn't detract from the realism of the flowers, but I look at them the way that I look at a real flower. But like I say, with all of my flowers, they're all done in such a way that you're putting them on cake, so we want the quickest method of being able to do your flowers. I'm just trying to find my veiner now that I've used for this. I'm actually using a Acidanthera veiner. It was the closest I could find. There it is. It was the closest I could find to the veining on this particular flower. It's not far off actually. As I say, the Gladioli veiners for making Gladioli is similar, just bigger and different shapes. I've got some powder on there as well. See, that's not coming off, so what you need to do if that happens, just get a little bit of white fat on your paper, rub that on, and it takes the colour off. We're alright on that side. Got a bit on the front of that one. That's okay. Right, get rid of that. Let's move my pad up there. And you need to decide which is your back and which is your front. The one with the ridge up is the front. The one with the two ridges is the back. So if I put that into there, so it's the ridge into the groove. Sounds like a record, doesn't it? Give that a press. Take that out of the veiner. Now the petals are, I'll deal with what we do with the petals after I've done all this, because there's a different way of dealing with both the rounded ones and the pointed ones slightly differently, so rather than confuse you, we'll get this bit done first. That's the back, that's the front. That needs to go in a bit more. Not quite got enough graining on there. The way that the veins go, they sort of go in a chevron. If you look at that, you probably won't be able to see that on camera, but it does have very similar veining on the Acidanthera cutter. Yeah, that's the front, so they're the fronts. One more to do. And then the same with the smaller rounded ones, a simple leaf shape. Put that wrong way up. Into that. I think I should have wiped my hands because everything's sticking. That's the right way, that's the front. Just make sure you get it far enough down so that it fits totally inside the vena. So put it into the widest part of the petal, in the vena. And that one. Right. So, now once I've veined those, this is the next step. On the flower, the rounded ones have a ridge up the front, the pointing ones have a ridge up the back. So I'll just leave that there so I know what I'm doing. So just get the back of the petals and pinch all the way up. That's the pointed ones. You could leave these to dry on a flat surface. I didn't. I put them into my foam, but looking at it now, I could have done it this way. The only thing that you need to remember is that when you're drying the rounded petals, which I'm just about to do now, these here, that you dry them upside down. So I'm just going to give that a pinch up the middle there, and then turn that over onto there. And then they'll flatten out a bit, just leaving the ridge. That's opening up a little bit. Make sure you get it up to the tip there and turn that over. Just make sure we've got that right at the tip. Yeah, we have now. Right, so you can set those to one side to dry. So then you can get, when they've dried, I've got my dried ones here. I'm just going to move that one that I've done there out of the way and get rid of that paste. I do get the odd comment when I'm doing my videos, but I'd like to hear from more of you. And if you can, I'd like to see you pictures of your work when you've done it as well. That's another good idea. That's something I haven't mentioned before, but it'd be a good idea to start now. Because I've got plenty of people saying, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Well, send me a picture when you've done it. I'm on Facebook, so you can send me a message on Facebook with a picture through Messenger. So it's Terry Hatfield on on there, and you'll see a picture of me in an evening suit, being posh because I've been out to a dinner that night. Yes, I'm not so much now, but I did used to go out at least once a year to a posh dinner with my friends from the Sugar Art Club, which is not in existence anymore. It's a shame really, because I used to demonstrate there for them as well, but a lot of the clubs broke away from the British Sugarcraft Guild when we thought that they were going to go bust, which probably a lot of people won't know about. But if you were in the British Sugarcraft Guild 30 years ago, they lost a lot of money with the Telford exhibition and they nearly went bust. And a lot of people split away because if the guild had gone bust, so would all of the clubs. Right, now then, that's the front of the rounded ones with the point upwards. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a dust at the bottom with this pale yellow. Now the yellow that I've used for this is honeysuckle from Edible Art, which is a very pale yellow. You can see the colour there. It's I think it's the palest one that they do in the yellows. So if you want to have a look, it depends on where you are whether you can get it or not. I mean, if you can find a sugarcraft shop that sells it, there's a lot of sugarcraft shops do sell their products. And then I'm going to get the pointed ones and I'm going to do the same thing on the front of there. So the front of them is where it's pinched up the back. So a little bit of the yellow right at the very base. They do a lot of online. I don't know whether they're still doing it because I haven't been to the Sugarcraft shows, but they used to go to Cake International every year and you could never get near their stand. It was so popular because the prices are a lot cheaper than a lot of them. Some of them charge an absolute fortune for all the stuff that they do. Right, I'm just going to get hold of one of the sets of stamens, which I've got one here that has got the 3 centres on that I've already done, and I'm going to dust these first before I start on the next bit. Now the top part here, the 3-prong part at the top there, stays white, but the pistil is, again, I'm going to use this yellow just to dust up there and up the stamens. And then on the very edge of the stamens there's a bit of light green, so I'm using tropical lime here, another Edible Art colour. It's sort of like a bit of a luminous green, if you'd like to call it that. Which brush is that? No. So I can find a brush that I've used for it. There we are. That's the one. I'm using quite a fine brush for this. So I'm just going to catch the top bit of the stamens. You can't really see, it's not very, because they're so tiny are these. And then I'm going to use blackcurrant is the other colour that I'm using. Then further down the stamens and a bit on the pistil, I'm going to dust a bit of the burgundy on there. Okay, so that's that part done. Right, for the next bit, not that one, I have got a brush somewhere. Is that it? Yeah, that's the one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the blackcurrant, just put that away, so we don't need that again. And I'm going to use my lid as my palette, which is what I always do with all of my flowers. When I find my isopropyl, that's there, left it out. I'm going to put a bit of the isopropyl in the lid, Get a bit of the blackcurrant in there. You don't need much because you're not going to use the right lot here. And then just mix some isopropyl in with it. Now the way that they go, it's like a sort of an upside down triangle. Well, it's a triangle shape. So start at the top and bring it down to the centre, just above the yellow there, and then just gradually go round like that. Then round the other side. Bring it down to the yellow there. Like that. So do that on each of your petals, and you're going to do this on all of the petals. Now looking online at the pictures, it's not on mine. Some of them do have little speckles around the top of the colour on some of them. It's like everything else, there's different varieties and everything, but the ones I've got in my garden are like this. They're just, they don't have the speckles on. I've gone off camera again, haven't I? Need a bit more isopropyl in there. You don't have to be too perfect with them because nothing is ever perfect in nature. You do find variations on different plants. So on the front with the ridge on the back, then on the pointed ones I'm going to do the same. I'm painting it rather than dusting it because it is quite deep, and if I dust it you won't get it as deep, and then also colour can go all over your petal where you don't want it to be. So that's why I'm painting rather than dusting. On a lot of flowers you usually tend to dust it on because you want that sort of faded effect, but with some flowers that's not good enough. Right, oops, so that's all on there. Right, we'll just get rid of that brush out of the way. I can wash that later. Always clean your brushes off in some of your isopropyl. Keep another container with isopropyl in just for cleaning, which I've got one here. It's got all my mucky stuff in. We'll just put that into soak while I'm doing this. I'll put these together. So I'll just put that in there. Any brushes that you need to clean, especially if you haven't got a lot of dusting brushes and you have to use them, you can clean them out initially with some corn flour or icing sugar on a board, but then you'll need to clean them out every so often to get rid of it, and isopropyl is the best thing. Soap and water won't bring all the colour out. So right, so we go back to my stamens now. Your centre. Start the white tape off underneath there like that. Now I have made a bud, but I'm not going to do that with you because I've done loads of buds before. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you the bud and you can do that yourselves. So start taping in your ones made with the simple leaf cutter first of all. So get hold of your petal, put your finger underneath and bend the wires down, and then pop that in. You don't want any of the wire showing, so once we've taped these in, then remember to pull your wires down. just going to tape down a little bit. There we are, like that. And then pull your wires down to make sure everything is nice and tight in so they don't move around. If things like leaves and petals and things like that are swinging around, it's because you haven't got them in tight enough. So always go around. Just be careful you don't pull the wires out. Then you can open those out a little bit. So that's the first part of the flower. So I'm going to bring the tape back up underneath there, and then start putting in your pointed ones in between the wide ones like that. Don't matter if there's a little bit of wire showing at this point, as long as you do what I've just done with the other wires and go in and pull your wires down. If your tape folds over like that, just open it back out again to be flat, because sometimes when you're stretching it with your other hand, it does tend to start to roll. And then we can tape down again. I'm just going to adjust my petals before I start pulling wires down so they come up. Just get your last wires that we've just put in and pull them down. And tape down. Right, so that's that done. So I'll just put that there. Now I have got a bud here that I did yesterday, and what I've done is I've done the bud shape here, and then I've rolled it down the back like that to give it a narrow back on it. So it's going to be, the only reason I put paste on the back of these to do the same thing was I tried it and it started looking a bit too thick, so I decided not to do it. Now the flowers sort of curve out like I've done with that, so I'm just going to get the fingers underneath like that and just curve that over like that to give it a curve on the back. And I've already done it a bit on that one there. And then what we can do then is, the buds do start off green but they turn white before they open out. So I've done it at that stage where it's got to the white part just before it starts opening out, and then I've divided it into three with my wheelie tool. So into your paste and do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some light green tape now. Just got a small piece here that should just do for this spray. Now they do grow on very long stems. They grow about 18 inch to 2 foot long to these flowers, and apparently they're very good for cut flowers, and they come in sprays together like this with more than one on the end of the spray. So I'm just going to start that off just underneath where the bend is. Petals getting in the way there. Put another one in like that. Just have to watch where your tape is when you do. Just duck it underneath like that when you're going round for the top part. Then we'll put a bud in. and get that in. Keep your tape down at an angle when you're twisting so that it goes down. And then once we get that far enough down so it misses the petals and there's no danger of breaking them, then you can go a little bit faster. But I'll just do it slowly for now until I get down to there, and then we can do it quickly. Like that. Take that off, then you can adjust your flowers then. Now if you've got a pair of long nose pliers like these come in handy for these, so you can move things around a bit without breaking. You can get in with them like that. So there we are. Just bring that down a little bit down that way. Just get rid of these out of the way. That's dried on nicely now. So you don't waste any powder. If you do it this way, using that as a palette, you can come back to it and you can reconstitute it and use it again. So there we are. That's my peacock flower, part of the gladiolus flower. As I say, I'll put the Latin names in underneath. I can't remember it. I have got, oh sorry, I've got it here at the side of me. I did write it down. Let me just check this so I get the pronunciation right. Abyssinian Gladiolus, Abyssinian Gladiolus, or Acidanthera Mariela. And that's probably went straight over your heads, same as it did with me. So it's not going to be a name that I'm going to remember. I can remember quite a lot of Latin names for flowers, but I think the Abyssinian Gladiolus is probably the best way to describe it. It's a bit easier to say and a bit easier to remember. So there we are. That's my lesson for today. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Hang on, I'll just move this over. I've got a coloured pad here and put that on there so you can see them. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and look forward to seeing you in the next video. So take care, stay safe, and see you soon.